My name was Ahmed. I was a respected Quran teacher in a quiet neighborhood of Cairo. For years, I upheld the traditions of my faith, guided by a deep sense of duty and obedience. Every prayer I uttered was a silent promise to a system that gave me security. But inside, I felt an insatiable emptiness, an echo of doubt growing louder in the silence of my soul. Then came the day that shifted everything, when I confronted death itself. It wasn't a gentle passing. It was an accident, a moment where the veil between worlds lifted, and I found myself in a shadowy realm. There, in unmistakable clarity, stood a figure radiant with light, Jesus. He called my name like a melody that pierced through the darkness, awakening something buried deep within me. He spoke not of doctrines, but of a profound spiritual battle, a war that sought to bind humanity within fear and control. In that instant, all I believed shattered like glass. I was shown truths that unraveled the very fabric of my existence. The teachings I had devoted my life to were not shielding me. They were chains. I realized how easily systems, religious, political, cultural, could deceive, drawing me away from the very essence of freedom and love. The stirring within me grew from a whisper to a command. It was time to reclaim my spirit. Returning from that brush with eternity, I was met not with understanding, but hostility. My family branded me a traitor for daring to question my faith, casting me into a void of guilt and isolation. Yet, amid that turmoil, I sought the light. I delved into the Bible, grappling with my newfound beliefs as the weight of potential loss hung heavily upon me. I am sharing this testimony today because I believe it's a call to awaken others, to break the silence and shine light on the truth that has been kept in shadow. If you feel a flicker of doubt or longing within, know you're not alone. There's a deeper purpose waiting for you. As we journey together, I invite you to comment below. Where are you watching from? And what time is it right now? Let's connect across the distance. And if you love Jesus as I now do, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. This isn't merely a story. It's a revelation that can transform lives, and the next chapter awaits. In the conservative neighborhood of Cairo where I grew up, life unfolded under the watchful eyes of tradition and expectation. The streets hummed with the sounds of prayer, the call echoing through the narrow alleys, commanding reverence and obedience. As a Sheikh, I was steeped in the rhythms of strict Islamic teachings, shaping my identity and my role within the community. Yet beneath the surface of piety, a quiet desperation festered, a longing for something more profound than the rigid doctrines laid out before us. The fear of community disapproval and the relentless grip of silence suffocated any flicker of dissent in my heart, stifling my thoughts and aspirations. One evening, everything changed. As I sat alone in my modest prayer room, reciting verses from the Quran, my thoughts began to wander. The veil of routine fell away, and I found myself questioning the very essence of my beliefs. It was as if the weight of generations rested on my shoulders, whispering doubts that I had buried deep within. My prayers felt hollow, like echoes in an empty chamber, and the discontent simmering inside me reached a boiling point. In that moment of vulnerability, I closed my eyes, longing for clarity, when suddenly darkness enveloped me. The familiar decorations of my room faded, and I felt myself slipping away. What followed was disorienting. I was drawn into a surreal realm devoid of color and light, a space that felt both threatening and liberating. As I drifted through this void, I stumbled upon an overwhelming presence, a light brighter than anything I had ever known. And then I saw him, Jesus. The sight of him shattered my perceptions of reality. His gaze pierced through my soul, filling me with an indescribable warmth that pushed back against the chilling shadows. I felt an immediate connection, as if he could see the tangled fears and doubts that had held me prisoner for so long. Jesus spoke to me, revealing the truth behind the systemic deception that shrouded my life. He unveiled hidden agendas woven into the teachings I had followed, showing me how the elite wielded power not through overt control, but by manipulating beliefs to stifle free thought. I saw visions of societal divisions, the chaos sown by leaders who feasted on fear and ignorance, keeping humanity shackled to compliance. The truth was a revelation that struck me like lightning, electrifying my very being. In his presence, I grasped the spiritual war we were engaged in, a struggle not just for my own soul, but for the souls of countless others entrapped in the same cycle. In that transcendent moment, a sense of purpose ignited within me. I understood that to remain silent while having been gifted this awakening would be a betrayal, not just to myself, but to every soul longing for liberation from the chains of deception. I experienced the urgency of sharing my newfound understanding, the call to awaken others before the forces of manipulation extinguished their spark of individuality. As the light surrounding Jesus began to fade, I realized that the journey ahead would demand courage, and the consequences of my newfound truth could cost me dearly. But the path to liberation was one I couldn't ignore. There were lives at stake, including my own. With each heartbeat, I was pulled back into my original reality, but nothing felt the same. I returned to the prayer room, forever changed, drowning in the tumult of my thoughts. My identity as a sheikh now felt like a mask. I no longer wanted to hide behind the facades that kept my community shackled to fear. As I processed what had happened, I felt the shadows of doubt creep back in. Would I find the strength to speak out and risk everything I held dear? The urgency of my mission to break free from the deception weighed heavily upon me. I now stood at a crossroads, to embrace the truth that would ignite a spiritual awakening or to succumb to the silence that sought to reclaim me. Every fiber of my being urged me to rise and confront the darkness, to step into the light and fulfill the purpose I had been called to embrace. As a respected Quran teacher in Cairo, I lived a life that others viewed as exemplary. At 35, I commanded respect in my community, devoted to my teachings and the principles of Islam. Yet, beneath the surface, an internal struggle simmered, a nagging sense of emotional emptiness that refused to subside. Despite my unwavering dedication, I felt increasingly disconnected from the very spiritual essence I was meant to embody. Each prayer I recited echoed within empty walls, reverberating like a chant devoid of meaning. The oppressive environment around me stifled my thoughts, as any questioning of faith appeared to threaten the delicate balance of conformity that governed our lives. In the quiet moments of reflection, I sought clarity, praying for a sign or revelation that would reinvigorate my spirit. I found myself grappling with the restrictions imposed by my faith and the repressive climate that suffocated freedom of thought. I cherished the Quran's teachings, yet felt trapped in a rigid interpretation that often left no room for personal exploration. This discontent grew into a storm, a longing for something more, something deeper than the rote practices I'd been taught to follow. It was during one of these moments of quiet agony that I made a decision to venture out into the night, seeking solace and clarity among the stars. That fateful evening, fate intervened. As I walked along the desolate streets of my neighborhood, lost in thought, I stumbled and fell, my mind spiraling into darkness. In those fleeting moments, I felt a profound disconnect from my body, an out-of-body experience that whisked me away from the harsh realities of my life. I was thrust into a void, unable to grasp what was happening until a brilliant light enveloped me. This was no ordinary light. It radiated love and understanding. And there, in the heart of that brilliance, I saw him, Jesus. As he approached, the weight of my doubts and fears began to dissolve. Jesus reached out to me, his presence soothing yet powerful. In that transformative moment, he unveiled layers of revelation that shattered my understanding. I could see the hidden agenda that manipulated the very fabric of belief, a spiritual war being waged not just within myself, but throughout the world. I witnessed how leaders and elites orchestrated deception, creating divisions among communities that once thrived in unity. There was a stark revelation that while I sought truth within the rigid confines of tradition, the essence of spirituality transcended such boundaries. With each word Jesus spoke, I felt a growing sense of urgency settle over me. The truths he revealed illuminated the darkness I had grappled with in my heart. I began to understand that the emotional emptiness I felt was not a personal failing, but rather a consequence of adhering to a faith that demanded compliance over inquiry. Jesus' message was clear. Awakening is profoundly painful yet essential. Liberation is only attainable when one confronts the deceptions woven through society. This meeting of the Spirit opened my eyes to the struggles of others facing similar battles, souls yearning for their own awakening amidst the tempest of a collapsing faith. As the light started to fade, I returned to my body, breathless and filled with a newfound sense of purpose. The gaiety of my surroundings felt alien to me now. My soul had been ignited, and there was no turning back. I faced the daunting reality that sharing these truths could put me at odds with my community, but I couldn't ignore the calling. I sensed that I had been entrusted with a mission, to speak out against the deception, to guide others through their own spiritual wars, and to illuminate the path toward awakening. And with that realization came an overwhelming question. Would I possess the courage to embrace this truth and share it, even if it meant risking everything I once held dear? As I knelt to pray in the quiet confines of my prayer room, the weight of my heart felt heavier than usual. The familiar words of the Quran, meant to bring solace, echoed around me but left me with an unsettling emptiness. I had devoted my life to my faith as a Sheikh in Cairo, teaching and guiding others in the ways of Islam. Yet, inside, a growing disconnection from God gnawed at my spirit. It was as if the very essence of my belief had transformed into a lifeless formality, a series of recitations devoid of spiritual engagement. Those moments of prayer should have filled me with peace, yet I often found myself plagued with doubt, questioning not just my faith but the very framework of my life. Around the same time, troubling dreams began to invade my nights. Each one left me drenched in cold sweat, dragging me into a shadowy realm filled with images that disturbed my sleep. I dreamt of my community, shrouded in darkness, bound by chains not visible to the eye but very real to the soul. The people I loved seemed to move like puppets, dancing to the strings pulled by an unseen force. In waking moments, I tried brushing these dreams aside, dismissing them as simple subconscious fears. But deep down, I recognized these dreams as warnings, a manifestation of the spiritual war one was fighting internally. I felt trapped in an oppressive silence, potential burgeoning but suffocated by a religious structure that demanded my compliance and stifled my individuality. As I continued my prayers, seeking guidance and clarity, the emptiness only deepened. The more I recited familiar verses, the more I realized how rigid and unyielding my interpretation had become. It was as if I had been handed a map meant to guide me, yet I had become lost within its confines. The idea that religion could be a tool of control rather than a source of liberation began to settle in my mind like fog. I started to see the manipulation at play within my community and the broader society. Leaders who preached compassion and unity often concealed their hidden agenda, perpetuating a cycle of fear and division. Each realization fed my unrest, pushing me closer to the precipice of questioning everything I once accepted without doubt. Then, during one particularly agonizing prayer, when the chasm of my disillusionment felt insurmountable, I received an unexpected revelation. In that moment of quiet desperation, a majestic presence enveloped me. Jesus appeared. The light radiating from him pierced through the fog of confusion in my heart, illuminating truths I had long overlooked. It was as if he had reached into the depths of my soul, pulling forth the threads of my doubts and insecurities. He showed me a reality where love and liberation prevailed over fear and division, revealing hidden connections that bound us all. The truth was that while deception ran deep through our societal structures, there was still a way to break free. Jesus spoke to me in a gentle yet powerful voice, unveiling the intricate web of manipulation, reminding me that the spiritual war was not just about faith, but about the integrity of our very existence. I saw visions of people yearning for the truth, encumbered by the chains of false doctrine. I understood then that those who wielded religious authority often did so while serving their own interests, perpetuating an agenda that kept their followers suppressed. As clarity washed over me, I felt an urgency to share these revelations, a drive to awaken those around me who were still shackled by ignorance. Yet, as with all awakenings, there was a cost. I understood that sharing my newfound insights could plunge me into conflict with my own community, severing ties I had spent a lifetime building. With that realization came a resolve I hadn't felt before. The light that Jesus had shown me ignited a fire within my heart, a call to action that would send ripples through the lives of those caught in the web of deception. I couldn't ignore it. The fear of losing everything I held dear now became the fuel for my newfound mission. I knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger and sacrifice, but the potential to free others from the darkness was worth every risk. In that moment, I made my choice. I was ready to follow the path of truth, ready to embrace the awakening that awaited, even if it meant wading through the spiritual war that raged within and around me. It was a day like any other, but it quickly spiraled into something I could never have anticipated. I was driving through the streets of Cairo, lost in thought, reflecting on my life as a sheikh. The familiar rhythm of traffic surrounded me, but my mind was caught up in the weight of my responsibilities. Teaching, leading, adhering to traditions that suffocated any flicker of doubt. Then it happened. A moment of distraction, a sudden jolt, and then blackness enveloped me. I felt my body being torn from reality, each ethereal thread unraveling until there was nothing but silence. In that silence, I found myself in a dark realm, a void surrounded by shadows. Cold and desolate, it felt like an abyss, the kind that pulls at your very essence. I was weightless, stripped of my physical form, floating in a space devoid of time. Panic set in. How had I ended up here? But then, from the depths of that darkness, a brilliant light erupted. It was blinding, pure, and as I turned toward it, I felt a warmth that washed over me, igniting something deep within. It was then that I saw him, Jesus. He stood there, radiant and filled with compassion. When he called my name, it resonated through my being, shaking off the fear that had gripped me since the accident. I felt an overwhelming surge of love and acceptance. In that moment, all my doubts and fears began to dissipate like mist in the morning sun. Jesus reached out a hand, and I felt drawn to it, as if it was the only thing anchoring me to reality. In his presence, clarity flowed like a river, flooding my heart with truths I had yet to comprehend. As he spoke, revelations unfurled before me, opening my eyes to a staggering reality. Jesus explained the ongoing spiritual war, the battle we engage in daily, often unseen. He unveiled the hidden agendas that the elite perpetuated, how our religious, political, and cultural systems are often cloaked in manipulation. I saw how the structures I had followed were sometimes designed not to uplift the soul, but to maintain control over the minds of the faithful. The deception extended far beyond personal belief. It was woven into the very fabric of our existence, obscuring our paths to true freedom. With each revelation, a sense of urgency enveloped me. I realized that the spiritual awakening was not a solitary journey, but a collective struggle against forces that sought to keep us suppressed. Jesus illuminated the connection between societal unrest and the personal conflicts within each heart. He urged me to understand that sharing these truths was essential, to warn others, to guide them through the same dark shadows I had traversed. Yet, amidst this empowering knowledge, I sensed the weight of a daunting reality. Confronting the status quo could cost me everything I had known. It was a tension that pulsed within me, awakening a warrior spirit that longed to stand against the tide of deception. Would I have the courage to rise and share my newfound understanding with a world still trapped in ignorance? The light surrounding Jesus illuminated my path forward, but I could sense the struggles awaiting me as I stepped back into reality, prepared to face the challenge head-on. Upon returning to my daily life, I was immediately struck by a harsh reality. The warmth of the sun that once felt comforting now seemed cold and unwelcoming. My heart raced as I approached home, each step echoing the fears that had taken root during my journey of awakening. I had crossed a threshold into a profound realm of understanding, yet I now faced hostility from those I had cherished the most, my family and my community. It felt surreal, almost like waking from a dream only to confront a nightmare. My revelations felt like a betrayal to them, an opening in the armor of tradition that encased us all. As I sat at the family dinner table that evening, an unbearable tension hung in the air. Conversations flowed around me, but they felt distant, muffled by the storm of guilt and loneliness brewing inside. My loved ones regarded me with suspicion, their faces a mixture of confusion and disappointment. They no longer saw the Ahmed who dutifully adhered to Islamic teachings. Instead, I had become a traitor in their eyes, having harbored doubts about our faith. The spiritual war one had experienced was now manifesting in painful ways, battling not just for my soul, but for my place within my family and culture. Those first few days after my return were suffocating. Each time I tried to explain my transformation, to share the encounter I had with Jesus, I was met with scornful glares and dismissive comments. "You've turned your back on us," my father said, his voice filled with anger and sorrow. That day I felt the weight of condemnation stabbing at my spirit. How could I convey the depth of my experience? How Jesus had illuminated the hidden agenda within our beliefs? How could I articulate the freedom I had felt in the embrace of truth? Every attempt to bridge the gap between us seemed to widen it further, leaving me feeling more isolated and filled with despair. The nights became the hardest. Alone in my room, I wrestled with an overwhelming sense of guilt. Guilt for leaving the path they had paved for me, for doubting the faith that had provided comfort to so many. I replayed my conversations with Jesus in my mind, the powerful truths he had revealed, the urgency of warning others about the deception that permeated our religious systems. I was acutely aware of the internal conflict raging inside me, a desperate yearning to reconnect with my family, and the equally strong compulsion to stand firm in my newfound knowledge. This inner turmoil left me feeling fragmented, as if my very identity had been torn in two. As days turned into weeks, I learned to navigate through the turbulence of my emotions. I sought solace in quiet places, poring over the scriptures of the Bible to find strength and clarity. Each verse became a lifeline, a reminder of the truth I had discovered and the spiritual awakening that lay ahead. I began to find a flicker of hope in the thought that perhaps, one day, my family could understand the changes within me. I held on to the belief that spiritual growth often comes with pain, that the path I had chosen was not easy but necessary. This knowledge fueled my resolve to share my experiences, to awaken others to the spiritual war that raged around us. In that crucible of conflict and reflection, I felt a growing urgency to speak out. The world continued to spin in a cycle of deception, rampant with division and despair. I watched as misinformation spread like wildfire, perpetuated by those with hidden agendas. I knew I could no longer remain silent. Jesus had reached out to me in my darkest hour. Now I felt compelled to reach out to others in theirs. Even though the fear of rejection lingered, the desire to shed light in the shadows pushed me onward. I stood at the edge of a new beginning, ready to embrace the calling that demanded my voice. Would my family ultimately hear me? Would they recognize the truth that had come alive within me? The journey was daunting, but the path toward awakening was one I was determined to follow, no matter the cost. In my search for truth, I began to feel the weight of my decisions pressing down on me. As a Sheikh in Cairo, my life had always been defined by the teachings of Islam and the expectations of my community. However, after that life-altering encounter with Jesus, I found myself yearning for answers that lay outside the boundaries I had accepted. Late at night, when the world around me was silent, I let my curiosity push through the walls of fear that had confined me for so long. It was in these stolen moments that I secretly sought out information about the Bible, hoping to uncover the truths that had eluded me. The more I learned, the deeper my desire for understanding grew. I sought out groups of individuals who had also stepped away from their faith, sharing stories of personal struggles and divine revelations. It was a relief to connect with others who had faced the same internal conflicts, who understood what it meant to navigate the choppy waters of doubt and conviction. Each meeting felt like a lifeline, reinforcing my resolve to pursue a path of awakening. Yet, with every connection I made, the gnawing fear of losing everything I had known loomed larger. What if my community found out? What if my family disowned me? The thought of becoming a pariah filled me with dread, yet the truth burned brightly within me, demanding to be shared. As the months passed, I became increasingly aware of the hidden agenda that often resides within religious structures, particularly those of the elite who claim authority. The teachings I once held sacred began to reveal layers of deception, showing me how fear was used as a tool to maintain control. The spiritual war one had begun to recognize was not merely a personal struggle, but a battle fought across all corners of society. With each new revelation, I felt compelled to warn others about the dangers of this manipulation, to help them awaken to the truths I had uncovered through my journey. One particular evening after a gathering, I found myself struggling with a profound sense of peace mixed with anxiety. I understood now that my awakening was not simply about rejecting my past, it was about reclaiming my identity. The urge to stand up against the deceptions that had surrounded us grew stronger, yet so did the fear of facing the consequences of such revelations. It was a tightrope walk between the desire to protect my loved ones and the call to expose the truth. I felt that if I didn't speak out, I would be complicit in the same cycle of denial that had ensnared so many before me. In those quiet moments of reflection, I sought comfort in prayer. As I poured my heart out, I felt Jesus beside me, his presence surrounding me with an indescribable warmth. He reassured me that I was not alone on this path, reminding me that even the most lost souls could be guided toward freedom. My journey was fraught with challenges, but I sensed that it was also a blessing, an opportunity to bring hope to others trapped in the shadows of deception. The awakening was not just my own. It was a chance to ignite a fire within those yearning for the light. With this in mind, I knew I had to press on, even while grappling with the fear that sought to hold me back. An undeniable sense of purpose fueled my determination to share the truth of my experience, to illuminate the way for others, and to embrace the mission I had been called to fulfill. In the aftermath of my encounter with Jesus, I felt an overwhelming certainty that my revelation was not solely for my own benefit. It was a divine calling. I had gained insights that many people in my life were blind to, truths that pierced through the haze of deception that surrounded us. The realization washed over me like a wave. The urgency to share my experience became a fire that burned deeply within me. How could I remain silent when so many were caught in a web of false beliefs and hidden agendas? I recognized my mission was to awaken others, to reveal the truths I had uncovered about the spiritual war we were all engaged in, whether we realized it or not. Days turned into weeks, and I wrestled with the decision to speak out. The fear of backlash from my family and community loomed like a dark cloud overhead. I'd seen how others had been ostracized for stepping outside the lines of our faith, branded as heretics for simply seeking a deeper connection with God. But every time the weight of fear threatened to pull me back into silence, I remembered the clarity I had received during my near-death experience. Jesus' words echoed in my mind, urging me to gather the courage to confront the shadows of deception that lay before me. It was a battle not just for my own freedom, but for the souls of those who remained unaware of the powerful forces manipulating them. I began speaking with others who had experienced similar awakenings, forming a small group of like-minded individuals who understood the urgency of our calling. We met in secret, sharing our stories, encouraging one another to stand firm against the waves of opposition we faced. In those meetings, I felt a sense of camaraderie, a brotherhood forged in the fires of truth and awakening. We spoke of how the elite, hidden behind veils of power, exploited our fears and uncertainties, perpetuating division and strife among people. The spiritual war we observed was not only personal, It was a global struggle that demanded active participants willing to challenge the status quo. Throughout this time, the weight of my mission pushed against the walls of doubt and guilt nestled deep within me. It was both terrifying and invigorating, knowing that my voice could inspire others who felt similarly trapped. I was painfully aware of the potential consequences of my actions, yet there was a fierce determination in my heart. The truth I carried felt like a precious gift, and I knew I had to share it, regardless of the personal cost. Each night, as I contemplated the decisions ahead, I could feel Jesus' presence beside me, providing comfort and strength. His unwavering support ignited a resolve that propelled me to move forward, to push through the fears that threatened to hold me back. Yet, the complexity of this journey weighed on me. While I felt empowered and enlightened, I still longed for reconciliation with my family, who viewed my awakening with distrust and disapproval. I knew I had stepped away from the faith they held dear, but I hoped that one day they might come to see the truth I had discovered. As I confronted the spiritual war around me, I also had to confront the fractures within my own life. I needed to convey my journey to them, to help them understand that embracing Jesus didn't mean forsaking our shared history, but rather fulfilling it in a more profound way. Each day felt like a step deeper into uncharted waters, navigating between the joy of newfound understanding and the sorrow of separation. The future was uncertain, but I understood that my awakening was just the beginning of a much larger story, filled with the potential for hope, healing, and truth. In a powerful moment of clarity, I made the decision to leave everything behind. The life I had known, the traditions that had defined me, the expectations that were suffocating my spirit. The desert stretched out before me, endless and daunting, but it represented a newfound freedom that I had longed for. As I began my journey across the sand, I felt a profound shift within me. For the first time, I was stepping into my true identity, unburdened by the chains of the past. The sun beat down on my back, but instead of feeling weighed down, I felt invigorated, as if each grain of sand beneath my feet was a stepping stone toward enlightenment. With every step, I carried the revelation Jesus had shared with me, the truths that unveiled the hidden agendas woven through society. I could see it clearly now. The spiritual war was not just a personal battle, it was a fight for the hearts and minds of many. I thought of my community, my family members still ensnared in the web of deception, clinging to outdated beliefs that stifled their potential. The weight of responsibility began to settle in my heart. I knew I couldn't let fear of rejection or consequences hold me back. The calling to spread the message of truth and awakening burned brightly within me, fueling my journey forward, even into the unknown. I sought to connect with other seekers along my path, individuals who were also yearning for freedom from the confines of their teachings. In conversations with fellow travelers, I shared my story, my encounter with Jesus, the truths he revealed about the manipulation by the elite, and the deceptions that kept us trapped in cycles of fear and doubt. These moments of connection felt electrifying, a small community emerging from the shadows of tradition. It was evident that we were not alone in our quest for understanding. Each voice added to the chorus of awakening, echoing with hope amid the chaos. Despite the camaraderie, the fear of separation from my roots continued to linger in the back of my mind. My family had been my entire world, and stepping away felt like breaking an invisible bond. I replayed conversations with my parents and siblings in my mind, imagining their reactions to my transformative journey. Would they disown me? Would they see me as a traitor to our shared faith? While the fears threatened to pull me back, the fire within urged me onward. I recalled the intensity of my revelations. The urgency of spreading truth became more vital than ever. This journey across the desert was not just about physical distance. It was a pilgrimage of the spirit, a movement toward complete liberation. As the horizon stretched before me, I began to realize that this was more than just a quest for personal truth. It was a mission to assist others in their awakening. I recognized that the path I had taken could also enlighten others still caught in the shadows of oppression. My heart swelled with determination as I envisioned a future where people could unite in love and understanding rather than fear and division. The spiritual war we fought was not just ours. It was a battle for humanity itself. With each step through the desert, I felt the weight of the past lifting, replaced by the bright promise of a new dawn, a promise that echoed the love of Jesus and the truth of the awakening that lay ahead. Years after my encounter with Jesus, I found myself establishing a new life in a supportive community that embraced the journey of awakening. Having once felt the crushing weight of isolation, I now dedicated myself to helping other ex-Muslims find their voices, guiding them toward the spiritual liberation I had so desperately sought. My transformation was not just personal. It became a powerful testimony that resonated through the lives of many. Each story I shared drew others in, lighting a spark of hope in those who felt trapped by their past. In this new community, the atmosphere was charged with understanding and compassion, a stark contrast to the suffocating silence of my former life. Together we formed bonds through shared experiences, enduring the struggles of navigating a world that often viewed us with suspicion. In our gatherings, I saw familiar faces, those who had also faced persecution for daring to question beliefs they had been raised with. Each testimony unfolded like a flower blooming in the desert, revealing the beauty of awakening amid adversity. We recognized that we were not just confronting our spiritual wars, we were also revealing the larger deception perpetuated by those in power. As I shared my story, I felt the urgency of my mission weighing heavily upon me. I recounted the revelation Jesus had shared, how he had pulled back the veil of ignorance and exposed the hidden agenda of the elite. The manipulation designed to keep people divided and loyal to rigid doctrines was pervasive, and I became increasingly determined to spread this truth. The world was in chaos, filled with division and strife, and I knew we could no longer remain silent. The personal awakening I had experienced was a call to arms, a call to illuminate the darkness that had kept so many in fear. But even with the strength from my new community, I remained haunted by the thought of my estranged family. I longed for the day when they might understand my journey or witness the transformative power of Jesus in my life. I knew that sharing the truth had the potential to heal the rift between us, and I held on to that hope as tightly as I could. Would they recognize the sincerity of my heart, or would they see only the label of heretic? The fear of rejection coexisted with my desire to reconnect, creating a complex emotional landscape that I navigated daily. As I continued my work, the possibility of resistance loomed large. I understood the stakes. Standing up against the status quo could lead to potential retaliation, ostracism, or worse. Yet, the drive to help others awaken to their own truths outweighed the fear of losing everything I had once built. In sharing my testimony, I not only found healing for myself, but also offered others a glimpse of hope in their darkest hours. Each conversation reinforced my belief that the truth holds the power to set us free, and each person I touched was a testament to the resilient spirit of those willing to fight back against the deception. With every step toward deeper understanding, I embraced the complexities of this journey, knowing it could lead not just to my liberation but to a larger awakening that could transform countless lives. In the midst of my life as a Sheikh in Cairo, I had devoted myself to the teachings of Islam, believing that I was on a path to enlightenment and spiritual fulfillment. But as I stood before my students, reciting verses from the Quran, an unsettling emptiness began to sour the sweetness of my devotion. I felt like a captive in my own life, trapped within rigid doctrines that left little room for personal connection with God. Each prayer that should have filled my heart with peace only reinforced a growing sense of disconnection. The once comforting rituals felt more like chains, binding me to a faith I was beginning to question. It was during a dark night of despair that the tension within me culminated. I lay in bed, consumed by troubling dreams that hinted at a world I had yet to truly understand, visions of oppression, fear, and a spiritual war raging unseen. The images were jarring, shadows lurking behind the faces of those I trusted, leaders manipulating the very fabric of our beliefs. I woke in a cold sweat, my heart racing, realizing how deeply I was internalizing the trauma around me, both personal and societal. I began to see my faith not as a source of empowerment, but as a potential tool of control, a hidden agenda of the elite, seeking to maintain power over the masses. It was during this chaotic time of questioning that I unexpectedly found myself in a near-death experience. An accident struck as I drove through the bustling streets, displacing me from my earthly body. Suddenly, I was enveloped in darkness, and then an overwhelming light emerged, bathing me in warmth and love. It was here that I encountered Jesus. His presence radiated compassion and understanding, cutting through the confusion and fear that had clouded my spirit. As he spoke my name, the burdens I had carried began to dissolve. In that sacred moment, Jesus revealed profound truths to me. He shared insights into the hidden agendas at play, how religious and political systems often conspired to sow division and keep society bound in fear. He showed me that the spiritual war one had sensed wasn't confined to my personal struggles. It was a global battle for souls, an awakening that required courageous hearts willing to challenge the status quo. I watched visions of people struggling under oppressive systems, and in the clarity of his light, I understood that my awakening was not solely for my benefit. It was part of a larger mission to bring hope and freedom to those still trapped in darkness. As I returned to consciousness, I felt transformed, driven by the urgency to share what I had learned. I knew that the truth I had encountered would be met with resistance from those still residing in ignorance. The fear of social ostracism nagged at me, especially as I considered the potential backlash from my family and community. Yet I couldn't ignore the call to action. Each day became a struggle between the discomfort of stepping outside the boundaries of my former life and the determination to speak out against the deception that had enshrouded my past. I knew that pursuing the truth, no matter how painful, was the key to genuine spiritual freedom, even if it required immense courage to break the silence and share my experience with the world. Would I be willing to dive into the depths of this journey and risk everything? Only time would tell, but my soul yearned for the light, for the truth, and for the chance to ignite awakening in others. As I reflect on my journey, I am reminded of the profound reality that transformation often comes at a cost. The collision of my beliefs with the truth unveiled by Jesus triggered not just a personal upheaval but a ripple effect within the very fabric of my existence. Each step away from my past was riddled with uncertainty, yet in that uncertainty lay the ultimate freedom. I invite you to consider, How often do we hide behind the shadows of our own convictions, succumbing to fear instead of seeking the truth? What would it take for you to step into the light of your own awakening? There's a powerful battle waging around us, a spiritual war that seeks to manipulate and divide through fear and ignorance. Whether we choose to recognize it or not, we are all part of a greater narrative that transcends the individual. The revelations I received are not solely mine. They beckon you as well. Have you ever felt the tug of a deeper truth, perhaps a flutter in your soul urging you to break free from the chains of conformity? If so, I urge you to listen. Each of us holds a piece of the puzzle. What potential revelations lie within your own heart? As we part ways today, I encourage you to share your thoughts, your experiences, and your feelings in the comments below. Let's create a community built on honesty, where each voice matters, and every story has the power to inspire. If this message resonates with you, please subscribe to Truth from Beyond and activate the notification bell. Your engagement is vital. It fuels the courage to uncover more hidden truths and share them in a world desperate for light. In the next video, we will dive deeper into another astonishing testimony, one that speaks of hope and divine encounters that challenge the very fabric of belief. I'm Hamza, and I thank you for accompanying me on this journey of awakening. Remember, the truth is a path we walk together, and it has the power to illuminate even the darkest of places. Until next time, keep seeking the light.